I've come to this realization that at the end of the day, customers disrupt markets. It's not startups, it's not the technology. The customers, they're unhappy, they're unsatisfied, they change their needs, they want something different, and they're change their behavior as a consequence. The only thing that the entrepreneur has going for them that the big companies don't have that can counterbalance lack of people, resources, and experience is honing in on one sliver of the activity that everybody else is doing badly.
Hey, welcome to the Freedom Experience. I'm your host, John Moncrief, and my guest today is Thales Teixeira. He's a former Harvard Business School professor, co-founder of the digital disruption consultancy decoupling.co, and author of Unlocking the Customer Value Chain. Now, I first came across Thales and his work at a conference in Whistler in Vancouver, the Metronomics Tip Top conference, and I was immediately drawn to how clearly he explains why so many industries get disrupted. I mean, think of video and Netflix, or taxis and Uber, or Gillette and Dollar Shave Club. It's not usually because someone builds using better technology or creates a business using better technology that gives them the advantage. It's because someone changes the fundamental business model. They decouple a portion of the value chain and they rethink that business model. So while Netflix is huge now, they were once a startup and they focused on a specific part of the value chain. They're putting entertainment in the house, and that killed the competition. So this conversation is all about that shift. We dig into why technology isn't the disruptor, that your customers are the disruptor, and how to look out for that. The new wave of decoupling that Thales is seeing as AI starts to emerge and rewire customer behavior and expectations, and how business owners can future-proof their companies by focusing on what customers actually value and being willing to change your own assumptions. So Thales has advised execs at some of the biggest companies in the world. But what I really love is or how grounded his thinking is. Whether you're running a startup, scaling a mid-sized business, or just thinking about how to stay relevant in an AI-driven world, this conversation with Thales is packed with ideas just worth sitting through. So with that, let's get into it. Thales, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you on. Really excited for our conversation today.
Oh, my pleasure, John. I'm excited as well.
So, to frame things up, it's been a while since we first met at Whistler, before we got on 22, 23. And I was really intrigued about the work that you've done there. Your background is professor at Harvard, if I remember rightly. And you've done all this great work on decoupling and how technology and business models in established industries were broken apart by this phenomenon called decoupling along the customer value chain. And I'm really interested in what's happening right now, how AI is affecting the work that you've done. But maybe to start with, just for the audience, a little bit of background on who you are and the work that you've done on decoupling and what in the value chain and what this all means.
Sure. So I'm originally from Brazil. I lived in Brazil until I was about 23, 24 years old. Then I came to the US to do a PhD at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I stayed there for 5 years doing a PhD in quantitative marketing. Much of my work was revolving around the use of eye tracking technology, and I brought out face tracking technology to be able to film people's faces while they're watching TV commercials, online ads, viral ads, and anything in visual format, and capture where their eyes were moving on the screen, capture their facial expressions to try to correlate that with behaviors that advertisers wanted to get: people engaged, people interested, people watching ads until the end, and then potentially kind of remembering the brand when they go to a supermarket or a car dealer or any other place to buy the products. And this was the moment that we had like all these new technologies, and I was among the first to use it for moving images. There's been a lot of work for still images, print ads, but I was using it
Yeah.
for moving. So the eyes move, and then the video images move, all sorts of complicated factors. I spent years and years and years figuring out all of the data and the math behind it to be able to make sense all of this. And kind of I published a couple of papers in top marketing journals, And that got me the opportunity to actually choose the university where I would become an assistant professor coming out of the PhD. I got quite a few offers in the US, but I chose Harvard Business School and I stayed there for 10 years. And kind of that was the big, one of my biggest lessons, constantly people ask me, how do you become a Harvard Business School professor? Well, basically, you do things that the Harvard faculty are excited about because they'll
They're going to go,
decide
wow.
whether you're going to get the job. So if you do things that other people are doing, they're not excited about that. Right. And at the time,
Yeah.
what were academics in advertising doing? They were asking people to watch these ads and then giving them a questionnaire, a survey, sometimes paper and pencil, fill out these things. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do any of this. I'm just going to film people, thousands of hours of filming people, watching them click ads, share ads, all these things, getting their facial expressions, using a tool that I actually kind of contacted a professor in Italy that was using it for security. And I said, oh, we're going to use it in advertising. And I found a way to make this work. And so Harvard Business School faculty were like, yeah, that's the future. We think that's the way to go. And they gave me a job and I stayed there for 10 years. In the beginning, I developed this area called economics of attention for the first 5 years. But, it was like, there was a 2009 to 2019. But around 2013, Facebook was popping up and all of these other startups were growing fast. And by the way, I was invited to go to Facebook to present my work. And I saw Mark Zuckerberg, and then I met with these senior executives, and I asked them, how are you planning to disrupt the social media industry before the IPO? I went to Netflix, gave a talk on economics of attention. Then I asked them, how are you planning to disrupt? They were still small at the time, the industry.
Yeah.
And they talked to me all about it. And then I went to Airbnb, the same thing. And I started listening kind of very common elements of it. First, it wasn't a secret. Like these startups didn't have like the secret, we're going to dominate the world. Nobody knows it. No, they were focusing on certain things. They never talked about technologies, by the way. That was shocking.
Yeah, that's something that's quite remarkable in reading the book, that it's not about the technology, it's the business model. Like, I mean, the technology supports it, but
That's
yeah.
right. So they were like focusing on, customers, very customer oriented, consumer oriented, and then thinking about a business model to actually monetize. And they had different parts of the company trying to create value for customers, and another part trying to extract value from some part of the ecosystem to capture money to be able to be profitable business. They didn't need to do it together. And this is one of the key differences. If you go to a company, and a big company, I work with a lot of big companies. I work with BMW, with Nike, with Adidas, with Samsung, LG. And if you're innovating inside of these big companies, you have to figure out a way to create new value, to make it distinct from the competition, to not destroy value for the company. You can't cannibalize the rest of the organization as you
Yeah.
create it, and you need to monetize it. It's too many things to do for one person or for a small group, so that's a difference. And so going back, I went to all of these startups and I was learning that they were doing different things because in a different industry, but the approach that they were taking was very, very similar. And then I started writing and teaching my students at Harvard about all of this, and kind of it started to coalesce into a series of frameworks and a way to think about how disruption works, which was very different from my colleagues at the time. Clay Christensen talking about disruptive
Yeah.
innovation, all of these other consultants, everybody was like technology, technology, technology. You build technology, and there's a reason for that, right? There's Apple and Facebook and Google and Amazon. We're like very technology focused, so it was natural to believe technology is the cause of disruption. And I learned something else.
Because that is, we associate all these companies with technology and we immediately think, particularly a small business, that it's about the technology. But you're picking up that like Netflix had decoupled content delivery from the cable companies, or Dollar Shave Club had disrupted Gillette by decoupling the purchase from the in-store experience. So I guess that's what you were visiting these companies and you were starting to see this firsthand, that sure, there's tech here, but what's really happening is something different. That's where the real advantages come from, right?
Yeah, exactly it. So it dawned on me when I went to learn more, and I wrote a Harvard Business School case to show this, to show how I wrote a case. Generally, Harvard Business School cases are written one case per one company. This is like a dogma. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as one case, two companies. And I said, I'm going to write a case that is three companies in one case, but it's only the beginning of these three companies. So I called it Airbnb, Etsy, and Uber acquiring the first 1,000 customers. And it was not about the whole story of the company. It's just that those first few years in which they had to acquire the first few 1,000 customers. And imagine at the time, John, you and I are kind of like older. We can remember a time before ride sharing. Some of
Yeah.
the younger audiences can't remember. They just like they grew up in it. But we can remember a time before ride sharing, and that like people didn't know. So like, how do you acquire a customer when you say, "Hey, we're going to do ride sharing. This is like these cars. They're not taxis. You don't know who's the driver. Some of them are not licensed, and you have to just jump on in this car, and they'll take you to wherever you want. You tell them to take it." And you're like, "But wait a minute, am I going to be safe? What's going to happen? Who's this guy? Who's this? Oh no, there's an app called Uber. What's Uber? What's ride sharing? Right? It's very hard to imagine, but at one point in time, these businesses had to do that. Same thing with
Yeah.
Airbnb. You're going to stay in somebody's house. What do you mean
Yeah.
I'm going to
Somebody
stay
else's
in
house.
somebody's house? Yeah, yeah, they're going to cook you breakfast when you're. What the hell is that? So people forget about that, and so I wanted to show the trials and tribulations of a startup trying to come up with a new business model and having to convince you need to convince your first customer who's going to be, and then your second and third, and then your 1,000 customers. And that's what was the case about by showing this. And one of the big underlying themes is there was never a mention of we have this disruptive technology that nobody else does. Airbnb, a website that was matchmaking people. Etsy, website that was trying to sell handcraft items. Uber, it was an app, yeah, but in the beginning, people don't remember. It wasn't automatic. You don't click and then a car is automatically allocated to you and comes. What you did in Airbnb in the early days is you clicked and you essentially text message somebody at Uber, or you would text message, or you called somebody at Uber, like a dispatcher. They didn't call it that, but it was
Yeah.
somebody that would get where you are and would say, "Oh, where do you want to go?" And what they would do is they would start calling black car companies or private car companies to try to find, "Are you available? No. Are you available? No. Are you available? Oh, you're available. Go pick up this person." And
So it
that
was
was
there was
automatic.
they were using probably in those days. I imagine with Uber or something using something like Twilio or something for the texting, which was an established technology or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and then manually phoning to find somebody to. So that, yeah,
What was the innovation? There was one innovation. There was something that was unique that didn't exist in the past, which is once you got an Uber app and they tried to connect it for you because it was manual, you would suddenly see in the map on your phone a little car coming closer and closer to you in the map.
yeah,
Why did you do that? Because they had to give these drivers, they had to give them a GPS device because they didn't have smartphones at the time. So the GPS would track and was connected with the phone so you could see it. So you had the peace of mind differently from a taxi. And I've been there before, called the taxi company, needed to go leave Boston, travel, give a talk somewhere, and I'm hoping that the car will arrive, but they said, "We're sending you a car." Sometimes it arrived, sometimes it didn't arrive late. This time I could see the little car coming to where I was, and I had this peace of mind. That was the first innovation, but it was a very
yeah,
small one. And kind of this is what kind of I advocate about in this process of, when you look at Uber, they could have said, we're a startup, we're going to get a lot of money, and we're going to hire our own drivers, and we're going to train our drivers. Or we could even buy our cars, buy drivers, and do all of this. They did none of that, as we all know. And so they really focused on the process of matchmaking people. They knew that there were enough cars out there. They knew that there were enough people wanting rides. But sometimes you were in San Francisco or New York, and there's a bunch of cars in one place and not enough in another. You're here, everybody's asked for a car. There's no way to connect the two. And so
yeah.
they focused on this connection problem instead of the driving, the finding the riders, getting them, all these things. Eventually they started doing other things, but they focused on one narrow activity in what I call the customer's value chain, which is me as a customer. I have a bunch of activities I need to do to derive value from products and services. From a ride, I need to figure out where I want to go, then I need to find a company, then I need to call or contact the company, and then I need to tell her certain information, and I need to wait for the car. I need to pray and hope that the car will arrive. When a car arrives, I step in, I'm transported. These are all activities in my value chain. And then I have to pay, and then I have to get out of the car, all these things. And Uber didn't focus on all of them. Uber just focused on a few, a sliver, and did that. And that's what I call decoupling in the book. looking at all activities in the value chain of the customer and breaking them apart and choosing to operate, choosing to execute one or very few of these activities, not doing everything at the same time.
So when we started, or just before we hit the record button, we were talking about the size of businesses that you work for example, at the moment. I think you were talking about going to Korea to speak to Hyundai and all that. But as we look through many of these businesses, if I think of Dollar Shave Club, Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, Amazon, they were all startups, or they were small businesses. They were sort of seeds or ideas. It's not that it starts with being a Hyundai and having the money to do this. It's actually something that's as important to a startup, and I imagine to an established business, when you're thinking about strategy and you're thinking about the customer value chain and how to build a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In fact, by working with startups for many years and working with incumbent established companies, the incumbents have a much harder time dealing with it, right?
Yeah,
They're used to focusing on all the activities, having end-to-end control and launching things only when they have all of the steps in the customer value chain ready to go. But the startups they don't have all of the resources, right? Sometimes I start my classes. Now I'm at the University of California because after the pandemic, I moved slightly before I moved to California. I wanted just to go to warmer weather with my family, and I tell my students, really show them kind of this idea that I first start with a puzzle. It's like I ask them, like, why do startups exist? There should be no reason. Startups have much less money than the established companies, at
yeah,
least at the beginning. They have less people. They have less resources. They don't have the experience, right? Uber, Travis, he never worked in transportation before. The Airbnb founders, they've never worked in hospitality before. Generally, these people are coming from industries that they don't have the experience. So they don't have the experience, the money, the resources, and the people. Why the hell do they still exist? Why are they like coming up in like there's got to be a reason. And after working with all these founders, I realized that the only thing that the entrepreneur has going for them that the big companies don't have, that can counterbalance lack of people, resources, and experience, is honing in on one sliver of the activity that everybody else
yeah,
is doing badly. It's what I call kind of like being in the kitchen. Like big companies, they're used to having a kitchen and doing a bunch of dishes, right? Think of a bank, U.S.
yeah.
bank. There's mortgages, there's interest accounts, there's checking accounts. They cater to the wealthy with private management of a bunch of
Wealth
things.
assets, yeah,
ATMs, they do all these. These are all kind of dishes in a kitchen, and the more they do, every now and then they're going to burn a plate. They're going to burn a steak.
yeah.
They have one that they don't do well. They can't do everything well, and so startup entrepreneurs look at that and say, "Hey, I'm going to create the best caviar possible. Or I'm going to create the best crab dish, or I'm going to create this best product or service, the sliver that I'm going to do much better than others because everybody else is just burning the dish, and so I'm going to focus on that." So focusing on one activity to do very, very well, and finding that activity that people are really, really upset with.
And that's the opportunity for the small, medium-sized business. We tend to try and do everything and be everything to everyone. It's to step back and try and identify that sliver where can do insanely well
Yeah.
in the customer value chain. Yeah, that.
Exactly. So looking at the customer value chain, obviously I do it in a very methodical approach. I collect a lot of data, and I use kind of AI tools that my team developed to collect all data in different markets and map out the customer value chain, all the activities that customers do in an industry, identify activities in which consumers are upset with the established companies, very unsatisfied, but the entrepreneurs have more of a gut feeling of this, right? I like to
Yeah,
talk about David Velas. This guy's like an American, Colombian, and he went to Brazil. He was never an entrepreneur. He didn't grow up. He went to Brazil to launch a digital bank in Brazil. At the time, I thought this guy's completely nuts. These countries, Brazil, India, they have very
yeah,
complex regulatory regimes. Entering there, it's like absolutely insane. And he went there and he launched what today is a $80 billion digital bank. One of the biggest. There's Revolut and Nubank. These are the two biggest
Yeah.
neobanks in the world. And this guy went there and he did it. How did he start? He realized that getting a credit card in Brazil was a hassle. It took a lot of time. You go to the bank and they ask for a bunch of documentation. You have to send it to them, sometimes the documentation. They'll take 3 to 4 days to evaluate it and decide whether to give you a credit card or not. And if they do, it takes like a couple of more days for you to receive the plastic card. What did he decide to do? Using kind of the open banking that was coming into Brazil, that big banks were required to share the data. Using that, he decided, I'm going to give you, in 90 seconds, I'm going to tell you yes or no if you're going to get a credit card from me. And if you do, I'm going to give you a digital credit card so you can start shopping on Amazon or Mercado Libre immediately. Yeah. And then your physical card will arrive. But like in 2 minutes, you can get a working credit card that you can buy something online. Boom.
Which is what so many of these new banks are doing now. But back then, it wasn't.
When somebody takes the path and doesn't succeed,
then
all these big companies have to go back and say, but now customers, like the new thing is customers were like, they loved Nubank. And they loved it so much, like I can get a credit card so quickly. And they said, well, what else you got new? And then Nubank said, hey, we got a checking account. And then we have this, and then we have that. That's how Nubank grew from decoupling and stealing the credit card activity to now adding more and more adjacent activities in the customer value chain. And today, it's essentially a full digital bank. Obviously, it doesn't have branches, so it's like competing very kind of lean. But its application, its mobile app is like superior to all of the established players.
So I'm curious then. The first kind of thing that happens with these companies is they decouple something, and they focus on that sliver. Is that something that then kind of becomes part of that culture as they are looking at the value chain and just, as you said, thinking about what's next here? Are they kind of looking at that next thing and saying, well, could we decouple something else here? Or is it just starting to grow out and do a better job on the service?
I think there's no one path to success. First of all, many of the entrepreneurs that I talked, they didn't know they were decoupling because there was no word for it. Obviously, for lack of a precise word, I would hear all the time or say, we're unbundling this, unbundling that. But unbundling is something very different. Unbundling is like breaking out a product. So if you have like a product like, New York Times subscription, and then you start selling just like the news section or just the editorials or just the restaurant reviews, what actually New York Times has started doing, right? You can just get kind of the cooking thing. That's unbundling. It's breaking up a product into pieces.
So you talked about these three waves, right? The first one was unbundling.
Yeah. Unbundling came really with the early internet, just like breaking up a product into multiple pieces and selling just the pieces. The typical, you and I, when we were kids, we would buy, cassette tapes or CDs. We couldn't buy the 15 songs separately, just the ones that we want. I remember like constantly buying a CD and wanting just to listen to one.
Just the one song.
Just one song. And I had to pay for the whole thing. But, now came, like now you can just buy one song at a time. That is classic unbundling, breaking out a product, selling just the pieces. And then the second wave was disintermediation, right? Taking out the middleman, and all these online companies in the dot-com bubble were the ones who say, we're going to take out the middleman. We're going to sell directly to consumer. We're going to sell this, sell that. No distributor, no retailer. Just go online. The travel industry completely transformed, right? Before, you couldn't buy a flight ticket from United Airlines. You have to go through a travel agent and all that stuff. Now this is gone. And so the third wave was this decoupling of looking at the activities in the customer value chain and breaking apart and delivering one activity at a time, right? And so you can see the elements in common. What is disruption? It has to do with breaking something apart and delivering a piece. And kind of they have these waves, and decoupling has been this kind of third wave that's been around already for a few decades. It's getting more and more traction. And the way kind of the startup entrepreneurs are thinking about this is, yes, they think about a sliver. So like I keep thinking it was like, what dish are you going to do that you think you can do better than anybody else? And
I love that.
Entrepreneurs, they say they think too big. The biggest problem with entrepreneurs is they think they need to create the new Uber or the new Airbnb. like not even Airbnb and Uber did that, right? Like I said, they just started creating something that eventually evolved to this. So you can't have this like I'm gonna climb Mount Everest in the first kind of month or so. You just got to have a few steps in the right direction. And these first few steps is decoupling, thinking about something that you can offer better. And if you can't, just make it even shorter and shorter, like more and more precise.
So
Because some of
keep
these
kind of
really
narrowing it down or bringing it in,
narrowing it down, right? Narrowing
which
it down.
entrepreneurs are so bad at. We kind of always want to get like bigger, bigger, as you said. It's like,
Yeah, because it's easy, right? Like it's easy
yeah,
to think I'm going to reinvent the entire kind of banking experience or education experience or healthcare experience because there's so much opportunity. But then you can't execute any of it. Again, you don't have the money, the experience, the resources, and the people, right? So
yeah,
then just like narrow it, offer something just like the sliver that you say, hey, if I do this, it will be better, right? Like offer just the lobster or the lobster tail or the lobster sauce or the ingredient for the lobster sauce. Figure out something that you can say I can offer better and build upon that, and then kind of you spiral and start growing because those customers are going to love you because you're
yeah,
doing something better than the big companies are doing, the established companies. And so after they love you, they will be open to whatever you have to say. Say, hey, I have something else. Are you interested in this other thing? They're going to say, of course I'm interested. I love that product. What about this? And so Airbnb started kind of doing all of these things. First, it was rooms, and then entire houses, and then experiences, and then on and on and on and on.
yeah. So, I mean, I love that analogy that you've got about sort of think about it as a dish, and just or even the source for a dish. And when you're kind of whether you're an existing business or you're starting something new, try and just narrow it down, niche, go against what you sort of typically doing, and that's very difficult. But I guess we've gone through unbundling, we've gone through disintermediation, we're in decoupling at the moment. And I'm wondering about how AI plays into all this. And I was worried about getting into this conversation thinking, you might think, oh, here goes another AI kind of conversation, but this is where you're focusing right now. And I was really excited when we kind of talked about that. But so what's going on at the moment with AI, and how are you thinking about how AI fits into decoupling? Is there a fourth wave at play here?
So kind of in short, I think what we're observing is definitely a fourth wave. There's companies that are coming in. AI is a technological innovation. Yeah, with when ChatGPT came out about like almost 3 years now, it made a huge change. The accessibility of you just going to a website, just prompting and asking questions, all variety of questions, and getting reasonable answers was a huge impact, right? Like the biggest technological adoptions are really the ones that really provide access, like broad
Yeah.
access to it. And so I'd like to think the computer, it was the PC, multi-purpose. You can do a bunch of things. Many people did lots of different things, and it provided access, right, for a few $1,000s. Then the internet came. Again, open up a browser, any normal computer can use it, so huge access. You didn't have to have specialized equipment, all these things. Go online, go to certain websites, and then it just exploded in terms of websites. And now AI is just exploding in terms of the capabilities, right? The capabilities to kind of provide answers and help you guide, do actions with agents and so on and so forth. And really, we're in a tidal wave. It's just like so much innovations that's
And
happening
it's going so quickly, right?
so quickly,
As you say,
so
it's just,
quickly,
yeah,
right? The amount of money that's being poured into these companies, a lot of money losing companies, but kind of vibe coding agents and all these things. And so I think what I observe that obviously there's this idea that these are like the tools of the modern business world, and so you need to understand the tools and investing. These companies are investing, investors are investing in the tools because we're going to find multiple use cases for all these tools. So there's definitely one side of just investing in the infrastructure, right?
yeah.
The infrastructure are chips. NVIDIA is doing that, electricity, and creating the processing, creating kind of the large language models through transformer technology. So all these coders are now earning multi-million dollar salaries, and then kind of
Yeah, we saw
being able
unbelievable.
to
Yeah.
extract all of this. So that's all the infrastructure. So if you're in one of these areas, kind of you're fine. Just like, work on, you're a railroad worker. You're going to have plenty of job. You're just like opening up kind of the space and just putting down the rails, and then, or the locomotive, or in the coal business. If you're in the infrastructure part, you're fine. You just like sit, relax, and kind of,
And build.
enjoy the unique opportunity. The vast majority of us, like me, I don't know if you are, I'm not in the chip developing business. I'm not in the electricity business. I don't in the data center business, and I'm not in the creating the fundamental large language models. I'm not. So I'm a
Yeah.
user of this technology, right? And the vast majority of us have to think of users of this technology. How can I apply it to create new businesses or to improve my business, right? And this fourth wave of disruption I'm seeing is still the decoupling mindset, because how can I
Okay.
look at a narrow sliver of activities, and then using AI as a tool to, how do I make it faster, make it cheaper, make it easier for my customers to do those things, for me to deliver, right? What I'm delivering. So it's much more a focus on your current business. And I have a very simple kind of framework that I work with entrepreneurs that want to adopt AI. The first thing that they do is the wrong thing. They think of
Yeah.
chat.
Tell us about that.
They think of
What do
chat.
they do?
How do we create a chat bot? Because I want to save money. I don't want to deal with my customers. I put a chat bot, and then the customers will talk to the chat bot. All right, I fire a bunch of people. That's not the way to go, right? Unless you're in the chatbot business, a chatbot is a tangential at best portion of your organization's value. So you
Yeah.
need to think about how you deliver value for your customers. What are the drivers of value for your customers? So just let's do a little study. You talked about Netflix. What are the drivers of value for Netflix? What makes Netflix unique to you and me that we're willing to pay money every month for it? Content, obviously.
Content. Didn't
What?
have adverts, and I was only happy
Yeah.
to pay.
No to low advertising, no to low
Yeah.
advertising content. What else?
I, I mean, there's or there used to be a lot of new stuff that came up, and series was available like almost straight away, so you could watch the whole thing and binge
Yeah.
watch.
So you can just like watch it at your own leisure. You have to have a great Netflix's user interface is really good. You watch a show halfway on the computer, then you move to your tablet. It's there. It's really
Which is
connected, and very easy to gravitate from devices from one device to other. But basically, when Netflix started going from being US based to going global, it realized that it needed content in many of the local countries. So now, if you go to Netflix, there's Brazil content, the South Korea, Japanese, Spanish.
Italians.
When
Yeah.
that happens, what happened with consumers? They were overwhelmed with content. When you're overwhelmed with content, you do like I've done many times, 45 minutes trying to figure out what I was going to watch, and I only have 1 hour free, and now I have 15 minutes, and I'm like, and I give up, right?
How
So
many times
one
that
of the
doesn't
aspects
happen? You
of
sit
the
down with a family, like, what are we going to watch?
I
45
know, and
minutes
you're like,
later.
there's too much stuff. And so
Yeah.
you need a recommendation engine. And in Netflix, one of the drivers of value of Netflix is having a good recommendation engine. And what we identified working with Netflix is they had a bad recommendation engine. Basically, if you wanted a sample of a show or a movie, it will start playing from the beginning. But that doesn't help. And so what we showed to them is we used AI to help them identify pieces of the content that had high engagement that could be used as a sample of what you will experience if you watch that show. And so now Netflix changed its algorithm to kind of, now you hover over a show, it just randomly shows some part of the show, but it's
Yeah.
strategically defined, something that is like a free sample of what you're going to experience if you watch that show, and that increased the likelihood that people will quickly find something to watch. So one of the drivers of Netflix, apart from good content, is helping you find the good content. So that's what you need to do in your business, right? What are the drivers of value of your business?
And that's
And
so
there's only
important
a
because we don't
handful.
think about it. What are the drivers of value, and what do people value? Like,
Yeah. What do your customer? What makes
yeah.
your customer choose you over competitors? That's a driver of your value. And then there's not going to be 20, 30 different drivers. It's generally a handful. It's generally 3 to 5, 3 to 7 drivers of value. And then only then, after you identify, then you ask a question: where can AI enhance one of these drivers of value? So you apply AI only to something that is very, very critical for your business that will create, enhance customer value above and beyond what it is now. And that allows you to filter only using AI for things that are value creating for your customer, that enhances the capability of you to deliver value for them, as opposed to say, hey, what many companies do is they try to learn about the technology, say, okay, now we learn, we can use like a chat app. What do we do? So McDonald's did this like huge mistake a few months ago. It looked at AI as like, AI is a good chat app and can save us money on people, right? Okay, so let's put it into the drive-throughs. And so there's, if you go online, you'll see a bunch of like YouTube or TikTok videos, people making fun because you talk to an AI agent when you arrive, and then it doesn't understand it. So there were like AI agents that were saying like, I don't understand. Do you want 200 chicken nuggets? And they said, no, no, no. Oh, do you want bacon on top of your ice cream? And people took videos of this, and then McDonald's canceled this. And frankly, like, my kids love McDonald's. I've gone to a few drive-throughs. I've never felt like this is an awful experience, the drive-through. It's certainly
No,
quite quick, and it's not a problem for them. McDonald's doesn't have drive-through as a problem. So you need to think of it from the customer's point of view, what drives value, map out those drivers of value, and then figure out where to plug in AI that can enhance that value.
yeah, I mean, I go back to what you were talking about earlier with also with the amount of data. When you were building your first system in Ann Arbor, and how you'd come up with something that was completely different to what was out there at the time, and you were watching where people were looking and the amount of video that you recorded. And I mean, just very simplistically, instead of trying to do all sorts of other things, one of the AI kind of uses there would be to speed up how fast you can kind of turn that data into intelligence for the customer. Like we can get you those answers faster, or we can do something. I was in a meeting in London the other day where we were had taken a whole lot of data for the client, and within a few hours kind of brought it together using the AI model that this agency now uses to present that data from all the research they've done, which the customer kind of walked around, wow, how did you do that quickly? Well, we've kind of put this thing together. But they focused on what they're really good at, and they enhanced what they're really good at. And I think I'm maybe oversimplifying it, but it's something that they really, really were good at, but was taking them a long time and a huge amount of resources.
Yeah.
And then they focus on, okay, how do we speed this up using AI?
Absolutely.
Instead of putting a chatbot somewhere. Well,
the way to think about it, to avoid what happens is, we learn about AI. Where can we just apply it? Just apply it so we can
yeah,
get use cases. You spend a lot of time, and then you have marginal improvements, and it really doesn't drive value for the customer. And so you're left with this thing. I'm paying for this technology, but I can't extract value from it, right? And so that's the big thing. Nobody's willing to pay for it, and there's definitely AI that's using for cost cutting, like internal cost cutting. Can you save money? So that's definitely one route to really think about. Can we save kind of,
I mean, was that what McDonald's was thinking when they kind of put the chat in, thinking, well, we could ultimately save money here. We don't have to use humans anymore. We put the chat in, but
it increases actually the lines in the drive-throughs, because
yeah,
when the AI didn't understand it, and you have to understand that AI is going to get it wrong at least 5% of the time. So it can't be on something critical that's like, all right, you're holding up the whole line because the AI is like, can't understand what you want.
it goes back to like,
purpose, right?
yeah, how you've argued that it's not the technology that drives the disruption. It's basically the business that's kind of, or the business model, and just taking technology and thinking, well, let's stick that into the drive-through is not the right.
Every important case, company, startup, or that I've kind of worked deeply, I've come to this realization that at the end of the day, customers disrupt markets. It's not startups, it's not the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Customers, they're unhappy, they're unsatisfied, they change their needs, they want something different, and they're changed their behavior as a consequence to that. So when we landed on an airport and we decided to get a Uber, we're disrupting the market. We're disrupting the taxi market in a big way when we do it. you know, tens of hundreds of times throughout the year, and then collectively we disrupt the market there. When say we don't want to, eat a certain type of food, we don't want to put things on our body. We don't like we're disrupting markets, and so it turns out that startups are learning to quickly understand this and deliver much faster what customers want, the new
Yeah.
thing customers want, and just established companies, they just like they fall over themselves with too many people, too many committees and meetings to really kind of understand, capture that this new change of the customer and build something out. And the startups like quickly deliver the value, and they think only afterwards on a business model to extract value, to make money out of that. So, and I was involved when Facebook was like a startup that they didn't know how to make money of it. They didn't know that advertising would be a big thing. They didn't know if an advertising had value. They left it later on. Sheryl Sandberg came in and kind of did a revolution of how to way to monetize it. But like creating value and capturing value as two separate steps in the entrepreneur's journey is super important.
I mean, when you think about, and I know we've touched on this a little bit, but the kind of advice that you're giving to CEOs and senior leadership teams at the moment, I know we've talked about niching down and really trying to find that part of the customer value chain that you can focus on. Use AI to kind of enhance what you're doing there, rather than, as we said, putting a chatbot on the website or using a chatbot in the drive-through or whatever it is. But they, I think there's this pressure for business owners at the moment. We need to deploy AI. We need to use it. Like you said, there's a tidal wave and things are moving faster, and they need to do something. But how should they be sort of thinking about this or approaching this as the CEO, the leadership team? I'm almost thinking it's slow down a bit, but maybe I'm wrong, and just really think about it. But how do they approach this and think about it, Thales?
Well, I think in general, bigger companies, when there's executives, they expect too much of their innovation, I think. That's one of the problems. Like the laundry list of things that you have to check off before a senior executive or CEO approves the innovative product or service or business model is just too much. And I tell them, you have to think of this kind of innovative project or innovative product or innovative process or even new startup within your company as kind of a premature baby. It's going to die if you ask much of it. That's what's
Yeah.
going to happen. And left and right, good ideas and die in big companies because they're asking too much of the innovation. You got to incubate it. That's the process of incubation, is like nurture it, care for it, kind of go slow with it. Don't ask too much of it too soon. Wait over time, create milestones, improvements, right? And one of the aspects, at least with my team in my business, that I do is I always tell them, like, don't worry about automating this. Like, come up with, you can use AI, whatever, like do one use case, show that you can add more value in something.
Yeah.
Prove it to us, show it to us in like one case, and then kind of will slowly help you iteratively to improve it. And only at the tail end do you think about automation, which means like making it without human interference. You don't want to automate something that is bad. You want to automate good things. So
I
do it
love that. Yeah.
manually. Do anything manually. Do things that don't scale. I tell them all the time, forget about scaling. Scaling is a problem for the future, not now. Now you want to
Get the
validate.
system built, right? Like, yeah.
Don't like
Eh,
let it be like duct taped systems. All it doesn't matter. Just as long as you can
Yeah.
see that there's some benefit coming out of it, and then we'll bring in kind of more people to scale it up, automate it, do all these things, and package it for delivery of customers. But in the beginning, just show the use case, prove, validate the use case. That's much, much more important. But people just want like everything together, packaged neatly. And just that's not how innovation works.
Yeah. I think that point you made about kind of creating the system first before even thinking about scaling it, and making sure that that system works, and then kind of going through the
Yeah.
process of
Tell them
scaling, whether it's a bit of,
show me one use case of one customer in one industry, one situation. Show me the improvement, right? Like let's see the improvement. Just do it manually, anything like that, and so that we can visualize it. And I think that's really the way to think about it. So for small businesses, right? Small businesses should kind of, yes, understand, read a little bit about AI, but there's just never ending. You're just gonna kind of just read too much
Yeah.
until you're like so bogged down with the details that it's just not healthy. You should like focus on your business and saying kind of what is, what is too slow, what is too expensive, what is too cumbersome and complex, what does involve too many hands, that kind of if we were able to do it, simpler,
How do
faster,
we?
easier,
Yeah.
cheaper, we could get an internal benefit, the company, or the customer would get an indirect benefit, and then kind of bring in somebody to say, okay, find the AI tools and let's just figure out the simplest use case possible that we can apply this, and then go from there.
I mean, I just reflect on what you said right a little bit earlier about Airbnb or Uber or whatever. Essentially, that's what they were doing at the beginning. They were saying we need to get to 1,000 customers, and where we're going to start this is we're going to get an SMS. We're then going to get on the phone, find somebody to come and pick them up, and we're pretty much going to build that system until we know how it works, which is the foundation of our business model, and then we're going to start it, scale it up. And I think again that was just a really good kind of analogy and way of thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and so I think I've been teaching for many years now, and I think really kind of shining a light on really what happens in the trials and tribulations to success is the best way to teach people, because everybody, we have these such high expectations of everything. We have
yeah,
very high expectations of what success is, of what leadership is, what entrepreneurship is, what innovation is. We just think it's this like miraculous thing that few people can do it, and they do it so fast and everything. And we look at it, even the most successful cases, man, it's like error upon
yeah,
error and mistake and simple things. Like you just have to be much more humble, much more humble. Let's do something much simpler, much just a little thing. Let's a little improvement here. Something little accumulated over time, just like compounding interest rates will just you know
yeah.
exponentially improve. Kind of that's kind of been more and more what I try to teach my students. Kind of just like take away all your visions of what it is to be
Is
successful, and just like kind of start kind of just little by
I
little,
love
like
it.
step
Yeah,
by step.
love it. So I really enjoyed the Unlocking the Customer Value Chain book, and I know you've started or you have the new business going, which is focused on AI. Is there a new book kind of in the works? I mean, is there thinking going on there? Can we expect something soon?
I never intended to write my first book, John. I never
Didn't you?
intended. I always thought that there's much more books out there than need be. Some of these should be just an article. Most of the books are like you read chapter one, chapter two, and then you're done. You don't need to read
Yeah,
it. So I never thought about doing it. Essentially, I would just present to senior executives and to my students, and they would say, "Where can we learn? I need to learn this. I want to read this. I want to go back and read it more and more." I
and
say, "Oh, there's
reflect.
an article here, a case there." No, I want it all packaged in. I like you need to have a book. So the book came as a consequence of so many people pestering me saying you need to
Ah,
write a book about this. Then I eventually said, okay, I'm going to write a book about this. But I'd never intended to write a book about it. And maybe there's another book in me coming out, but not now. I don't have an intention to do it. I'll only write a book if I see, as I felt at the time, like people are going in the wrong direction, and they
yeah,
need to understand these concepts. And I'll show them some examples. And these are not these examples are actual people. I went in the trenches and I extracted it all out, and I had a lot of support from Harvard Business School to kind of to do this. And so kind of it came out, but it was like a lot of work. And now
that's
to be excited about, I launched a new startup that are actually trying to put that in practice to give it, because I think people don't need more ideas about it. They'll just need systems to help figure out, for example, how do I map out a customer value chain for hospital equipment, or something like more kind of esoteric, right? How do I
yeah,
map out the customer value chain? And when I talk to people that sell wind turbines or like a trash collecting company. All this, how do I map out? Okay, no, we have a way to do that. All right, now like how do I need to understand where the established companies are not doing well. How do I do that? Initially, I do online surveys, but I didn't like it that much. It's still expensive, sometimes hard to do.
Yeah.
So we started collecting online reviews, and we used online reviews to evaluate what people's satisfaction, or NPS, decomposed by each activity in the customer value chain. So we created a little tool that allows you to, instead of having an NPS, right? Disney has an NPS of 70,
Yeah.
Netflix of 65, Apple of 80. Instead of having one number, you have a bunch of numbers that have a curve that goes up and down as the customer satisfaction goes up and down for each activity that your company does. And I've seen many, we've collected many of these: auto industry, retailing, apparel, and many others. And what you realize is there's companies that are good at certain things and bad at others, and there's companies that are good at others and bad at certain things. And so once you start seeing this, you start seeing the opportunities of the established companies. Where are they generally really bad at? And that is kind of the beachhead that startups should focus on. There's an opportunity for improvement, and I'm much more excited about helping
Yeah.
entrepreneurs identify these opportunities in a very objective, customer-oriented fashion than kind of writing another book with ideas.
So as you work with those entrepreneurs, you're looking at a value chain for an industry, and you're almost identifying where that decoupling, where that focus should be, and
Exactly.
saying to them, that's so. I mean, I'll get the name of the business and everything, put them into the show notes if folks want to reach out and get in touch with you. But that's the focus of what you're doing at the moment.
That's
Tell
the
us.
focus. Because I had many entrepreneurs like, I want to apply this in the industry. How do I
Yeah.
discover where to enter, where the established companies are doing very well? That's the easiest point of entry, right? Where people are unhappy. Why are you going to enter an industry in which everybody's like, I'm super satisfied with my, my bank, or my education company, or my mortgage lender, or kind of, my retailer of choice. I'm super satisfied in the delivery. Like, why are you gonna like put so much effort into that? You're not gonna get
When you,
customers for a long, long time. Get customers where everybody's like fed up. If you get a
yeah.
bunch of people that are fed up with established companies, they're willing to look at others. And so you say, hey, I offer this for you, right? In the auto industry, like I'm sure you bought a new car before. Yeah,
Yeah.
the auto industry, one of the things we identify where people are most unhappy, there's two areas. One is in negotiation. And so when, you buy a Tesla, no negotiation, they already knew that. Most of the industry know that. But the other one is when you're trading in your used car at a dealer, people get really upset at the valuation of the trade,
Yeah.
right? My car's worth $40,000. You're giving me a 28. You're ripping me off. I
Yeah.
want to buy a new car. They're really upset with that, right? So that's an opportunity, right? And we can go from industry to industry. And I can point
And find those.
opportunities, find these opportunities where people are by and large really upset. There's no good solution for that. So instead of building everything out, just focus on those weak links that we call
Love it. So I got one last question for you. The show is called The Freedom Experience. You've moved to California. You're in a startup mode. You have a family. What's freedom kind of look like for you? What's
it. Yeah. Freedom to me is the ability to choose,
yeah.
right? I've always felt that the ability to choose, have the options to choose, is one of the most profound and important aspects of it. It's actually what distinguishes a customer. What is a customer? Like in the hospital system in the US, you don't have much choice. You're not a
Yeah.
customer, you're a patient.
Yeah.
They do things to you, like mechanic does it to a car. Just like, please take care of me. And they sometimes, oh, do you want to do this or not? But it's not really a question. You don't have options. When you do have options, you're a customer. And in life, I want to be a customer of everything. I want to have options: where to live, what to spend my time on, what to work with. I'm not an employee. I teach at the University of California now, but it's kind of, I have other things that I can do. So for me, kind of, as I've grown more and more, I realize if I have options, realistic options that I can choose from, I'll be all right. Options of what to eat, where to go out with my family, where to travel, how to spend my day, or my work day. And, if I want to move to another country, do I really
You can
realistically have? So the more and more I work, I try to make sure I have a bunch of options that are realistic and possible. And when I do that, I always feel that I'm going to be okay.
I love it. And I love the fact that you chose to take a bit of time with us today and educate us and help this audience and share some of your wisdom, Thales. I really do appreciate the time.
Real treat talk.
Thanks for listening to The Freedom Experience. If this episode got you thinking, if it hit a nerve, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Leave us a review and share it with someone who's building something meaningful. All of that helps us to reach more business owners, business leaders like you, and to make an impact in the world. To explore how we're helping to grow your next gen leadership and to teach them some of these concepts and to help you to build a more purpose-driven company, then head on over to Small Giants and take a look at some of our programs over there. You'll find practical tools, leadership programs, and a global community of business owners focused on people-first growth. And then finally, if you want to learn more about Thales's work, then head over to decoupling.co or pick up a copy of his book, Unlocking the Customer Value Chain. It's one of those books that shifts how you see your business and your customers. And the links for that are all down below. See you next time.